Hello, Warblocks. Okay, the issue, first of all, I'll just admit the social contract right now is not a legitimate contract. However, there is consideration because you do receive various protections and services from the government. There is compatibility, and in fact, we do have multiple social contracts because we're in a social contract, so to speak, um, at the national level, at the state level, at the county level, and arbitrarily down. I mean, some people live in city limits. They also have a so-called implied social contract with their city government, and they do receive things from the city government. The problem is that there's no consent. There is no proper consent, and I don't agree with the arguments people make about social contracts, where they say there isn't an implied consent or that a previous generation gave the consent. Um, so that's the main problem. But then that can be rectified various ways. I mean, market anarchists might say, hey, it's an illegitimate contract, so we're just going to do something totally different. But we can also just say, well, what's really missing? Just the consent? Well, when you reach an age of majority, you could be asked to consent. And if you don't consent, then you could be forced to leave the property. I mean, I'm talking according to uh, market anarchist type principles where everything would be privatized. If the government were private, there would be no problem for it telling you that, well, I'm offering you this contract uh, as a reward for accepting the contract. You get the rights of a citizen. You can live here. You can move freely. We'll protect your civil rights, and so on. And the problem there is that that's not good enough. I don't actually want someone to not be considered a citizen because they refuse to pay taxes. I believe that we are in a social organization um, for purposes that are higher level purposes, more important reasons than the idea that the government owns the property of the United States and we're entering into a private contract. I think that you get your rights of citizen when you're born. It's not part of paying the fee structure. And this is where the social contract really breaks down, is that this kind of an agreement, this kind of organization, is not really done under the umbrella of contract law. And could it be? No, because contract law itself is a construct of states, okay, of these social organizations. So that state has to exist before the contract law has any reality. So we can't base the creation of society on a principle of contract that requires some sort of controlling authority to enforce those rules of contract. So there must be some other reason, and basically it's our biological um, need to cooperate, the kind of creatures that we are cooperative creatures, and we're really just expressing that. And we'll use whatever principles we can to do so. So the main point of my talking about social contract is to say that there's really not much missing from the social contract for it to be a legitimate contract in the eyes of properly, viewing the situation of someone like a market anarchist or a libertarian that believes everything should be privatized. Um, we could make those changes and we still would not have an acceptable situation, because we would have the same situation that we have now with just one difference. You could freely emigrate if you did not accept the social contract. So we're violating that now. As a result, there is no real legitimate social contract. On the other hand, it's a lot easier to make the changes to our current system that would make that a legitimate contract than it is to change to a whole new system, which, if we did, could end up with all the same injustices that we have today, with people forcing you to pay taxes or to leave your home. So um, the idea of a social contract is not very far from a real contract. There's certain logical issues with it requiring uh, some sort of social organization to act as a controlling authority. So it's something about some kind of a contract law, which is not by playing the games, the games of the economy, by the rules that have been set up, but something more abstract of why we decide to cooperate with people rather than fight them.